going on, fellas? This is Mike D, Mr. Double Down on You with another episode of Black Fathers Now. And dig this, man. I got a brother, and when I say brother, it's my frat brother. Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated is in the building. I got one of my brothers on the call today, and this brother is he's doing some amazing work. He's put an amazing work out there, and he's done so from a place that is inspiring him to really help change the narrative or change the conversations that we have in our household with our family and with our children. And who I have is none other than my frat brother, Bryson Thompson Sr. He's a husband. He's a father. He and his wife run a chiropractic practice in Atlanta, Georgia. He's originally from Little Africa, South Carolina. We're going to talk a little bit about that. He's a former educator, but then he's also author of the book, How Angels Are Made. And How Angels Are Made is this book that really spawns the dialogue about grief, loss, and death, with your kids and being able to talk about that. And so we're going to jump into that and the inspiration. But, fellas and ladies listening to in the Black Fathers Now family, let's welcome my frat brother, Bryson Thompson Sr. What's up, brother?
What's going on, man? Mike, I appreciate you having me on. For real, appreciate you, bro.
Man, no doubt, man. Look, when we were connected, man, from the Geechee podcast, having a brain fart. Huh?
Kiana Edie, she's a Sarah from New Geechee podcast.
That's right. When Kiana connected us via email and was just like, Mike, there's this brother, he's actually your frat brother, that has a bomb story that y'all need to link. And she has a New Geechee podcast, which is a bomb podcast. So if y'all don't already know about or have not listened to New Geechee podcast, go check that out because she dropped some really good stuff. But she connected us because she felt like there might be some kind of synergy, in our connection here. And so I'm super grateful for her for linking this thing up. And we're going to get into it and kind of jive and talk and whatever about your story, brother.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So before we get started, I like to always give shout outs, man. So, make sure to give a shout out to those individuals that help you to be who you are. Again, who are we without our village, brother?
So first and foremost, I'd have to give a shout out to my lovely wife. Me and her work together as an awesome team. And a lot of the things that I do is a reflection of our ability to not only just be a couple together, but also just to be a good partnership. So she allows me to have the kids to give the story to, but she's also been the person that I've been consistent with and growing with for probably around the last 14 years of my life. So I got to start off giving her that shout out. Then I got to shout out, of course, the parents. My mom, who's in heaven, she's the foundation for all this. She's the reason why, of course, the book was made in the first place. Awesome person, man. From a whole different place. She's an awesome person. My stepdad, Leroy, he was there. Him and my mom married when we were about 4 years old. So I got to give Pops a shout out. He's the man. My real dad, Roderick Thompson. So I had an interest in a great village that was raised, and of course everybody out in Little Africa, South Carolina, all the Tanner family, all my folks in Chesney, South Carolina, and the Gethsemane Baptist Church, who have always supported everything I've done. And then the last two people I would definitely say, my Clemson alumni family. Clemson was a near and dear place to me, and I've met some of the most amazing people in my lifetime there, and they've definitely shaped who I am and have allowed me to kind of grow as a first generation college student into a person who can say my network spans the globe right now. And then lastly, we're going to say, of course, the brothers of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. This has probably been the most inspirational group of men who ever entered my life. And I will say that from the day that I came to an interest meeting all the way until today, I've had nothing but great inspiration, motivation, and also accountability from the brothers. So I have to shout out the brothers just because that connection of men have helped transform me into the person I became today.
Great shout outs, man. Again, it takes a village, brother. It takes a village. They say it takes a village to raise a child, but every successful individual, grown elder or whatever has a village around them as well. And so it's awesome to really shout out your village so that people can understand that it ain't just about us. Yes, we're black fathers. Yes, we're black men. Yes, we're doing the doggone thing, but it ain't just us. It's an and to our village. So I appreciate your shout outs there, brother.
Yes, sir.
And so, and you mentioned village and you mentioned growing up. And we also mentioned in the intro that you're from Little Africa, South Carolina. So you got to talk to us a little bit about growing up in that particular environment, growing up in a city called Little Africa, South Carolina, and what that meant to you, man.
So Little Africa, South Carolina, it is a small little country town in North Spartanburg. So if you know anything about Spartanburg, South Carolina, it's right up there on the outskirts. I found out much later that it's one of the first African American owned like colonies or settlements after slavery. So it was a couple of families who bought the land actually, and it was split up amongst 7 families. So my stepfather, his dad was actually one of the people who bought a ton of land there. He was an ex-sharecropper. Bought the land there, and when I was 4 years old, my mother met my stepdad, or she met him when I was 3, and they got married on my 4th birthday. And
Wow.
so that was the transition of us moving into Little Africa, South Carolina. So I was there from right before I was 4 years old, all the way up until the moment I graduated high school. And it is a awesome community. I mean, it was very, very small. We don't have no red lights or anything like that. We had a little store. One of the local guys had a convenience store there where we would go and get things from there. But for the most part, growing up in Africa, it was cool, man, because you got to walk the streets without worried about somebody messing with the kids. You got to go to people's house without calling them on the phone. You could just go show up and knock on the door. You knock if you live there, Mike, I knock on the door. Hey, bro, we got to play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And you go knock on everybody's door in the neighborhood. You might walk a mile or two, but you go find everybody. Y'all, let's go run a game. And that's how we grew up. I mean, it was cool like that. We were the Little Africa group. I mean, when you think about my high school, Little Africa probably represented 5%, 3% of the school, right? But at one point in my high school life, we made the entire starting lineup for the basketball team. I didn't play basketball like that, but the guys from Africa did. They just let you know what we were doing when we came out to a whole different school. I mean, we were those kids, man. We were close. And I mean, I have the same best friend since I was in kindergarten. He's actually a coach at Georgia Southern right now. So, I mean, we've had amazing turnout from Little Africa. And like I said, it's just a group of, it's a big family. It's one big family. And definitely when I was there, it was a ton of kids, ton of families. The demographics have changed a little bit now, just because, of course, most of us have grown up and moved away. But I mean, it's an amazing place. It's amazing people there. I love Africa. I always say that to dad.
So growing up in a place, again, you and I are in the same age bracket, so to speak. Growing up in an era that we grew up in, 80s, 90s or whatnot, and you grow up in a place called Little Africa, and it was called Little Africa. What did that do to you from the standpoint of understanding identity, understanding who you were? Because again, we grew up in an era. I remember, I was born in 79. So I grew up in the 80s, came of age in the 90s. And at the time, it was kind of a negative connotation or association with anything, quote unquote, Africa, right? I mean, that was like when somebody was talking about you, they said Africa. And I was wondering if growing up in Little Africa with the rich experience that you have, did that give you a different sense of self, a different sense of identity that you didn't have a negative mental association with Africa? It's changed now, but growing up in the 80s and 90s, that was almost an insult to some people.
Nah, man, it was amazing for me. It gave me a sense of pride. Like even to the day, it gives me a sense of pride. I never had any negative association with Africa. To be honest with you, I just always felt like Black people work together. Black people were great. It just gave me a sense because that's what I grew up around. It was Little Africa was all Black people for the most part. Everybody owned their land. Everybody got along. It wasn't a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, of course, we did have drugs and stuff going on, but I mean, it gave me a sense of we came from a community and we came from something that was special. So
Woo.
I always thought that I was special coming from Little Africa. Like I always thought like, yo, we Little Africa. Like we different. You know, we throw up the LA sign and we thought we were different. Like we just thought that, you know, people talk Los Angeles, we were throwing up LA like we were, like I wear a Los Angeles hat with the LA on it. Like it was Africa. You know
That's Little Africa. That ain't Los Angeles. That's Little Africa.
Los Angeles is Little Africa. Like I literally wore a Los Angeles hat, Los Angeles Dodgers hat with the LA on it for Little Africa. So it gave me a different sense. Like we just had a different vibe and a different swag about ourselves. And yeah,
that's let me tell you that's such a powerful thing. And I wanted you to jump into that a little bit because, you know, sometimes when I look at society now, again, you know, now it's cool to be connected with Africa. Like it's the wave, like everybody's, going natural, and we want to be connected to our roots. And we see the value of this African continent that we had been disconnected from due to the history of slavery. You know what I'm saying? And then the history not being told to us about the kings and the queens and the value of the land and the culture and the things that were there. And so to me, it's such a powerful situation that you came from an environment in which Africa was celebrated. It was something in which you saw, like you mentioned, the value of we owned the land. We had the community. It was all us. Cooperative economics was there. It gave you a different sense of pride, a different sense of possibility, which I'll be honest with you, I think is a challenge in society now. And that's why it's so important for platforms like this and others and, you know, authors like yourself who are writing stories to kind of show the value that, you know, people of African descent are bringing to society so that we can then show the next generation the possibilities. Like you were able to see land ownership, you were able to see cooperation, you were able to see community. We're able to show that through the creative process now in hopes of inspiring the next generation behind us.
absolutely. And I'm gonna tell you, man, one thing I will say, growing up in Little Africa, helped me be resourceful, because nobody that had money or anything like that. I'm the first male on any side of my family tree, as far as mom, dad, and stepdad, to go to a 4-year school. So what I learned from it is it don't take all that money and all that crap to make yourself successful. It takes people cultivating you. And that's what a small environment and community did. It helped people cultivate me. It kept me out of trouble. It made the people who I was walking down the street, they knew my name and knew my dad, and they'd call him if I was doing something stupid. So it wasn't all that you got to call the police in to police the world. It was more like, we're going to police each other. We're going to hold each other accountable. If you do something stupid, we're going to say, hey, come here before I call your dad. And it just gave us it just allowed you to be who you were. People allowed you to grow up who you wanted to be. And it wasn't all that craziness that you had to worry about. And that's one thing that when you get to cities and people start thinking about, you need to let's throw money at the problems. That's not the solution. Let's throw people at the problem. Let's throw villages.
Pause. Whoa. You can't jump. You can't jump over that, brother. You said, no, I'm serious. You dropped the bar, and fellas, ladies listening to, I hope you caught what he said. We don't need to throw money at the problem. We need to throw people at the problem. And that is such an interesting perspective, because you talked about growing, and I jotted down this note, cultivating greatness, right? It's all about cultivating greatness, all about cultivating the land, cultivating the community, cultivating the minds. You know what I'm saying? Like I heard Tupac had a quote. And Tupac said, I might not change the world, but I guarantee I'll spark the mind of the one who'll change the world. Like if you stop and you think about that, it's about cultivating greatness. It's not about throwing money at a problem. It's about throwing people at a problem. And when you throw people at a problem, especially if you throw the right people at the problem, those people stay around and you build relationships, you build communities, you build these villages that you talked about where you saw this rich environment, this rich culture. And it wasn't even about money. Y'all owned the land. You had stuff to do. You knocked on people's doors, but doggone it, you had people. It wasn't about the money. You had people. Marinate on that, fellas. That was a bar dropped by Bryson Thompson Sr.
Appreciate it, bro. And I'm going to be honest with you. You dropped one of my favorite lines in the world, because I feel like I am the guy Tupac was talking about. Like, I don't know if you feel like that, but I always felt like the rose in the concrete. Like, I always felt like you put me anywhere I can grow. And you know, Tupac was one of my greatest inspirations. So I'm glad that you threw the Tupac thing in there, because he was one of the guys who cultivated the mindset when you're talking about being young. You know, when you're talking about Tupac, you're talking about 10 years old for me, 9 years old for me, learning who Tupac was, all the way up until he died. I was probably about 13 years old at that point. And I remember hearing his death and I cried. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I cried when Tupac died because I was like inspired by the stuff he was doing, and not by like the gangster stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
like when you went and watched videos and interviews and stuff like that, you knew what he was talking about. And this is the type of stuff he was talking about in the first place. So,
Dude,
yeah.
I'm gonna tell you what's powerful about that is it was interesting thinking about Tupac specifically. It's the complexity, right? So the brother was a complex individual. He wasn't complicated, he was complex. And so when you think about the black male experience, and we're black fathers, we're growing up, or we have kids that are growing up in the world now, and we've grown up and are in the process of navigating it. We're not complicated. It's complex. It's complexity, meaning there's a lot of different sides. So you mentioned the gangster side did not inspire you from Tupac, but when you start thinking about the activism, you look at this brother. He was in the streets. He could bang with the Bloods and the Crips. He could roll with them, do that. But then his mama was a Black Panther. He grew up around the Panthers and activism and Afeni Shakur and Asada Shakurs and this. And I mean, he was in the mix of all of that, right? And he had this dual thing in which he was trying to figure it out, but he had a complexity. He wasn't complicated. He had complexity. And I think sometimes the African-American male specifically experience gets misunderstood because of its complexity. Not that we're complicated, we're complex. And we're complex because of our history. And that also gives us the ability to connect with a lot of different people from a lot of walks of life because of that complexity. Again, it's a difference. It's not complicated, it's complex.
Yep. You're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head with that one.
Brother, man, that's dope. And so growing up in Little Africa, this rich environment, you were inspired, you went on to Clemson and you got into education, correct?
Yep.
Okay. What inspired you to pursue education as a career?
So I'm gonna be real with you, man. I was one of the smart kids growing up. Nobody knew I was smart, to be real. Made great grades. Again, nobody knew that because I used to be turn up,
Mm-hmm.
But my senior year of high school, I signed up for this honors class called Teach Cadets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with the Teach Cadets program, they will allow you to take 2 year block classes and actually go to a school and teach in high school. So senior year, you're not trying to do like I was done with all my courses. So I wasn't trying to do no real work. So it's like, oh, let me do this Teach Cadet. My position coach was the middle school PE coach. And I was like, bam, coach, I'm going to go ahead and do this Teach Cadet. I'm going to jump in your class. We're going to kick it for the first 2 periods of the day. Like, I ain't trying to go to school like that. And I had it all set up. And I was like, all right, bet, this is what I'm going to do, right? I get my paperwork that says where you're assigned. And these folks put me in a special education classroom in middle school to help this teacher. Wow. And I'm just like, special ed? What is special ed? I'm not trying to do that. Like, you just don't know. Like, I'd never been in special ed class, never stepped foot. I knew some kids or some guys I played with, all that stuff I knew had been in there, but I didn't know what that was. So I was kind of apprehensive. So fast forward, I ended up going into this special ed class. I had kids in there from my neighborhood. I had kids whose siblings I knew and stuff like that. And very early on, those kids latched on. Like, they latched on to what I was doing. You got to think I was 17 years old in high school because I didn't graduate until I was graduating when I was 17 still. And I'm in this class, and the teacher has me teaching certain lessons already. So, like, I grabbed onto it. The students grabbed onto it. It became a very natural feel for me. And, I got accepted initially in Clemson as accountant. And by the time I even stepped on campus, I had changed my major to special ed because of that experience. So it was very, very, very interesting route to get into education. And it just was basically off of me thinking I was supposed to just waste some time and take this honors class and get some extra points to, my teacher must have seen something, and she threw me in this class, and the rest was history, man. It just became an absolute passion of mine. Working with, kids who I thought needed a little bit more pushing than the average guy. Kids who, people thought were behavior problems, but it's just, that's just how Buddy act. He ain't even really bad. He turn up. That's what he do. That's what his parents do. That's what his folks do. So it was a really, really great introduction and segue into, becoming an educator and getting into that route. And it's just something that basically stuck with me and will stick with me for the rest of my life.
You know, it's amazing, dude. I look at life from the perspective of there's no such thing as luck, right? I don't believe in luck. I believe everything is divinely orchestrated in a way that it's supposed to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like things happen the way they're supposed to happen. And it's funny, we all hear the term hindsight's 2020, right? So 2020 is referring to perfect vision, and hindsight being perfect means you look back and it all makes sense. So when you're going through something, it don't make sense. You're just like, why the heck am I doing this? Or why is this happening? Or why is this circumstance? But then it's funny, everything that you've gone through in life, when you turn back and look at it, you're like, aha, that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the whole concept of hindsight's 2020. And so as you mentioned that you are going to go to college as an accountant, but your senior year in high school, you did this internship in which you were working with, you know, special education students. You came to find a love for something that you didn't even know that you had, right? And you found a desire and a need in which you were trying to serve the need of kids who needed a little bit more help, right? And I'm looking at this knowing where you are now in regards to now an author of a book entitled How Angels Are Made, which is written for kids who need a little bit more help to understand the grieving process. You know what I'm saying? It's amazing how these things start to line up. What are your thoughts on that?
No, it is, man. It really becomes an interesting journey, because I would have never known that the introduction to education will make me a lifelong educator. Because even though I'm not in a classroom now, I still consider myself an educator. And then now being 3 years removed from the classroom, right? Because I went to work with me and my wife opened an office together, to now going back to being a person who's back with kids again. So to your point, you know, it all makes sense. Because even with the book, I would have not known how to reach kids and present it and what do they really need without all that. Like I would have never known how to make the presentation the way it is. Because one thing about the book is that if you didn't know any better, and I'm not to like brag on myself or anything, you wouldn't know it was a first time author who wrote it. You know, you wouldn't know it was somebody who has that first experience, or they weren't published through, you know, a publishing company. You know, I'm gonna make sure I send you a copy when we get off here. I'm gonna send you a copy.
Okay.
But you know, you just wouldn't know. And I can definitely say it's from being in the classroom for years, having hands on kids, and knowing what they like and what they understand. And, you know, all of it ties together perfectly. And to your point, I've never thought about the hindsight 22 concept. But, you know, it all makes sense now that, you know, you brought that up. That's a great point you made there, brother.
Yeah. You know, and it's interesting, dude, because I look at everything and I believe everything is connected, especially as we start walking in purpose and we start walking in the trajectory that we're supposed to walk. All these things start opening up, lining up, and connecting. And so to your point, you know, you didn't expect education to be a thing that you wanted to get into, but then lo and behold, you're like, hold up. I see, I groove with this. You know what I'm saying? This is my thing. This is my world. I can impact. And other people see that I have a gift here because they're giving me more than I'm supposed to have at this particular point. But then you come to fast forward it. That was just preparation for you to be able to do this. Right. And then it's interesting because who knows what this is preparation for as you move forward. But we have to continue to keep ourselves, you know, open to the opportunities and open to the process. And the moment that we stop believing that it's all working out for us, you can just take a step and look back again, that hindsight 2020 thing. And you're just like, hold up, all these steps are doggone lining up. And I didn't do anything on the front end to make them line up. They're just lining up the way that they're supposed to. I'm just walking in that purpose. So fellas, I hope you're paying attention to Bryson's story, you know, up to this point, because it's extremely important to me about walking in purpose, but then being open to opportunities. A lot of times we resist. We're like, man, I'm going, like you mentioned, you were going to school as an accountant, right?
Yes.
Some people might not have had the wherewithal to realize that there's a gift in the educational realm here. They would have been like, nope, I've already established my major. I'm going to be an accountant. I'm going to school and a major in accountant. And they might have gone to be an accountant, but in their heart, they would have known there was something else here that's missing. You listened. I got a question here. I know this is kind of deviating a little bit. What made you, or what gave you the inspiration to change from accounting to education, even though accounting was your initial plan?
I mean, it was just, man, I like what I was doing. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, it really was literally. Um, I felt like I was natural in that environment. It felt very natural. But I also reflected back on, I never had a black male teacher my entire life until I was in college in a French class.
Ooh,
I never had a black male teacher
mm,
through my entire educational career.
mm,
Um, my only the black male teacher I had in my building was actually my football and position coach.
mm.
I did not take his social studies class, and he was the bruh.
Mm. Wow.
He was the bruh.
Wow.
Um, so it wasn't something that I knew it was a need. You see what I'm saying? I
Mhm.
felt like it was a need. Accounting was cool. That was just because I was really good at math. But I really, I didn't know what I wanted to do overall long term. I knew I wanted to be great. So,
Mm.
I know education would be something I could start out as, so.
You said you knew you wanted to be great, right? That's what you just said.
I knew that, man. I knew that from young. I always felt special a long time ago. You know what I'm saying? I didn't need nobody to tell me I was special. I always felt like I was like, I always felt it.
Mm. That's what's up, man. But I knew I needed to be great. So your whole pursuit was, how can I find a way to be great? I interviewed a brother, it was a few episodes back, and he's a barber out of Atlanta, an entrepreneur, TV show, all this kind of stuff. He cuts Nas's hair and Grant Hill and this. I mean, he does all kind of stuff. But one of the things that he talked about was, if he cannot be great in this particular area, he doesn't even step into it. Like, he only focuses on areas, he steps into areas in which he can be great. And to me, that spoke to me, because that's self-awareness. And so to your point was, you knew you were special. You knew there was something great inside of you. It was just all about allowing that clarity to come to figure out, okay, which lane will this be in? But greatness is coming.
Yeah,
You've already
absolutely,
accepted that.
absolutely.
Dig that. And so, kind of, I guess, fast forwarding a little bit here, man. We talk about this book and we referenced it a few times, How Angels Are Made. It talks about grief, loss, and death, but it's also helping to spawn that conversation with kids and helping kids to kind of understand and grab a hold of that, because that's a part of life. Talk to us a little bit about, or tell us the story of how you came to the writing of this book, and then the inspiration behind it, and ultimately, what you're hoping that it does, in society.
Okay, so in 2016, I actually lost my mother to stomach cancer. It was a very quick process to happen. We found out that she had cancer probably about a month before she passed.
Mm,
And my son, I'm a mama's boy, but my son was a grandma's boy. So him and my mother had a really close relationship. So when we found out, let me just give you some background. So in December, on Christmas 2015, my mom came to my house. They came for the regular Christmas thing to spend the night, and she was walking real slow. And I was just like, Mom, what's going on with you? And she said her stomach was messed up, right? Something wasn't going on. It was her insulin or something like that. So, the plan was to send my son back with them for New Year's so we could go turn up for New Year's.
mm-hmm.
But after seeing her, I was like, Mom, when you leave here, you got to go to the doctor. Like, go find out. She went, they said they found something. She had to go back. And they was like, when it went back, they were just like, oh, they found a mass. And I was like, oh, mass, we fit to fix that. And then as I got down there, I spent New Year's Day and everything, 2016, in the hospital. And the guy just told us, we found about 80% mass on your mother's stomach. And they found it, man. The guy was talking about, like, she might have 2 to 3 weeks left or 4. I was just like, man, there's no way. Like, how did this happen this quick, So during that time, I spent a lot of time, like, getting my son up there, and I was going all the chemos. And you got to understand, she's in South Carolina, I'm in Atlanta, so I'm driving 3 hours each way back and forth to make every chemo and all these things like that. And then it was one night, the night that she passed, it was a Tuesday night. I had just went up there that weekend, And about 8, I called her. She was on the phone with my son, and they were talking about him acting up at school like he typically does.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see that in the book because that really happened. So a lot of stuff in the book is like the true exactly what happened.
Okay.
And they got off the phone, and about 11 o'clock, man, my brother called me and was like, Mama passed out or something like that. She was throwing up and she passed out. I took her to the doctor. And it was just like, it was weird. But at some point during the time waiting for her to call me back, I just felt like she was gone. Like, I was like, man, I was like, Mama gone. I think I told my wife that. And lo and behold, I get a phone call a couple minutes later. My brother saying, Mama's gone. And the only thing I could think of the whole time we was going there and, getting up there and everything, my son was looking for his grandma. So I immediately had to start having conversations with him, like, grandma's gone. She's not gonna be back no more. She's gonna, I started, the things of how angels are made, I started talking to him about this stuff, right? And at her wake, we took him. We made sure he got to see her. Me and him were the last people out of the building. So even in the book, you'll see like there's a picture that has like me and my son telling my mom he loves him and all this stuff like that. That happened. Like I sat there and made him like, see his grandmother. I told him grandma was gone, let him know, told him to tell grandma she loved her, all these things like that we did. And 2 days after her funeral, I couldn't sleep one night. From 11 o'clock to about 4 o'clock in the morning, I wrote the entire book. I wrote the entire book during that period of time. I don't know how I wrote it. I've told everybody it had to be my mom or something, but I don't know how I wrote it because it came together a little too perfectly. To your point earlier, how things come together without you even knowing. And to be honest with you, I sat on the book for 4 years. So it was an interesting process. I mean, in 4 years, I sat on the book, but it was really just inspired by the, the initial writing was just thinking about the conversation I was having with my son and how difficult it was, and thinking like, man, is this what everybody goes through with their kid when somebody passes? And I realized a lot of times people don't even bring the kids to the wake or the funeral or anything. So I just wanted to make sure that, hey, if I can give back or if I can share the story at some point, this can be useful. This information can be useful for somebody at some point in time.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, man, like that is such a powerful story, image, testimony, because as you were describing it in my mind, I was thinking of it all. You know what I'm saying? And it took me back to, I had a grandmother that passed away the end of last year, and then also another grandmother that passed the end of 2016. And one of the things that I remember, because it's like a vivid imagery of my kids, at the wake or at the funeral of my grandparents, and the questions that they had, and how they're processing the finality of death. And and the thing is, culturally at times we run from death because we're scared to talk about it. You even from the standpoint of like life insurance and all that, we're like, man, I don't want to talk about no life insurance and wills, man. I don't want to talk about no will and all of that, because man, shoot, I'm gonna jinx myself. Like, no, you're not. But the thing is, it is a part of life, and we have to have these conversations. And it's not a morbid thing. It's helping people to understand and process, because when you don't have those conversations, if you don't openly communicate, then what ends up happening is you bury those feelings, you bury those images, you bury those conceptions. I'll even tell you, like, full transparency, I used to have a huge issue with death, growing up. Like, I didn't like wakes. I didn't like all of that stuff. Well, I mean, I don't like them now, but I didn't want to go to them, because for me, imagery is extremely important. Right. And so for me, a lot of people who had passed away years ago, the last image that I had of them was at a wake. And I didn't like for that imagery to be burned into my psyche. And so I've had to get to a place in which, I understand that that's, part of the narrative, but that's not the only thing that I hold on to, because I'm not harping on that. I'm building memories around the other images that I have. Does that make sense to you?
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, but I'm very similar. So I'm not going to act like I'm not the best. I mean, I've had a lot of people close to me die, and it's always been tough. I hate it, man. I can't stand it. But I've come to a absolute reality, and I think losing a mother or somebody would do it to you. that death is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It is an absolute truth that me and you will not be here at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
That's it.
Absolute truth.
It's a fact. Mm-hmm.
So how do we make sure that knowing this truth is going to happen, that we prepare for it?
Mm.
That we come to some type of understanding that this is what it is. The only thing you are is your dash.
Mm. That's it.
You own your dash. That's all you are.
The dash between the beginning and the end. And I'm gonna tell you what was powerful about that. And again, this applies to fatherhood. The movie Black Panther, and you know where I'm going. The movie Black Panther, when he was walking through the journey of the Valley of the Ancestors, and he came into his dad, and he was telling his dad, like, why did you leave me? T'Chaka, his father. And his father said, if I have not prepared you, or a man who has not prepared his own kids or his own son for his death has failed him as a father. And so it's like, when you even think about that specifically there, applying it to what you're talking about, it makes so much sense. But culturally, we don't do that.
Yeah. People are scared. I mean, people are scared to have a conversation. That was one that is the main reason why I am adamantly telling people the importance of this book. Because the book walks people through the situation that lots of people go through. You have the beginning is everything's rosy, everybody's hanging out, you see the relationship, you see their bond, you see the I love you and hugs and all these things like that. And then all of a sudden, usually what the kid does, they see somebody crying. They see you crying, they don't understand why. You're usually trying to send them out of the room because, of course, men especially, black men especially, we don't want to show signs of weakness. So as opposed to embracing them and saying, hey, let you see that I'm a human being and I have emotions, we say, move away from it so you don't see this part of me. Nah, your kids need to know that you're a human, because it's okay to cry. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to have every single emotion on the spectrum, because you do not want to raise emotionless kids.
Ooh, say that again, brother.
Yeah, you do not want to raise emotionless kids. So we have to do those things. And that's the point of maturity that I've gotten to at this point. So even, the book has helped me a ton, because my wife was pregnant with my second son when my mom passed. So my mom never got to meet my youngest son, and she never got to meet my daughter. And she has no girls in her my oldest brother has 3 boys too. I had 2 boys. So she never got to see a granddaughter. And that's all she was hoping for, because she don't have any girls herself. So, like at this point, like I'm even with my younger kids, talking to them about their grandma, talking to them about death, talking to them about what happened to her. And I just think that, either I do it or they don't know. And
pause. That either I do it or they don't know.
Yeah.
That's that again, another gem and another bar, because a lot of times we pawn stuff off on other people.
Yep.
Right? We put things off on other entities. We put things off on other organizations, and that's somebody else's problem. If I don't do it, they won't know. Yep. That fellas, I hope you paid attention to what Bryson said there. If I don't do it, then they won't know. That should let you know, that should give you every inspiration to share, to communicate, to do, to be there, to operate in a way that, look, if you don't do it, they will not know. So therefore, what are they not going to know because you didn't do it? Marinate on that for a second, fellas. That's deep, brother.
Yeah.
That's deep, man. Like, dude, I mean, the concept of this is so important for us to be comfortable having these conversations, but then to open up this window, because again, if we don't do it, they won't know. And if they don't know, we're just basically letting them figure it out for themselves. And
we know how that works. We know the results of that.
We know the results of that. Just letting them figure it out for themselves. Come on, man. Fella, that's fatherhood. Like, I mean, again, and I'm going to tell you, this is another like transparent moment for myself. Part of me doing these interviews with brothers like yourself is selfish in a sense, right? Because I'm able to gain so much wisdom from you all's experiences, you all's journeys and stories. And I'm able to pull nuggets and gems to think about myself, but then to go and apply so that I can be a better father. And it's not about me being a better father so I get pats on the back of Mike D is the father of the year. It ain't got nothing to do with that, right? I interviewed a guy, and he was telling me, he said, you have to pull ego out of it. And it's not about you getting recognized. It's about your kids getting the best experience needed and or necessary. It's about your wife getting the best husband that she deserves. You know what I'm saying? It's about doing that. It's not about you getting the accolade. It's about the results of the things that you're doing, the things that you're taking action on. And it's back to what you said. If I don't do it, they don't know. So and I'm taking that and I'm using that. I'm flipping it. I'll give you credit on the quote at some point. But but dude, I appreciate that because this is helping me to become a better man.
Yeah. Hopefully, man. That's we all got to grow together. That's what it is.
And so the book, I mean, it's currently out there, right?
Absolutely. Currently out. I just received the copies. The shipment came in on August the 21st.
Okay. So yeah, so at the release of this, they ready, they out, you know, the time that this is getting released, Christmas time, y'all need to go ahead and buy these bad boys, need to be under the tree so that kids can understand conversations. But this is something that is timeless. I look at this as like evergreen information, a conversation that we need to have so that we make things normalized and comfortable so that we can be better. And we can operate better. I look at a lot of issues that our families face legitimately, and almost everything stems from miscommunication or the lack of communication. So if we communicate better, or we sometimes just simply communicate, we make things a lot better because everything stems from miscommunication or the lack of communication. So this book, How Angels Are Made by Bryson Thompson Sr. is all about spawning that communication. And so is it available on Amazon or on a particular website somewhere? Where can people grab the book?
So you can do Amazon. I'm going to be honest with you. My preference will be to go through my personal website.
Okay.
And the personal website are howangelsaremade.com.
Okay.
It's just the book title, howangelsaremade.com. Because there you'll be able to actually see the story. Like the website walks you through a lot of information. It's really, really cool. And I like for people to understand the story behind it because that to me means the most. Like the biggest thing for me is this book is a legacy. And it is a legacy and a tribute to the person my mother was. And through this book, it'll allow her to continue to impact and influence future generations. Because I'm a very small character in this book. The character in this book is mostly my mother. And of course it is my wife, myself, and my son. But it's her spirit that has led this thing to be there. So I just like people to know that. So if they want to go to the website, it'll give them so much information. And it'll really help.
It is howangelsaremade.com. How Angels Are Made.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. And then you also mentioned, part of your story, you're in education, but then you and your wife currently run a chiropractic practice in Atlanta as well. So you're an author, you're a current, even though you're not in a classroom, you're still an educator. And then you all run a chiropractic practice in the Atlanta area. Talk to us a little bit about, I guess, the practice. Where can people find you if they're needing services or interested in that? And your wife's the chiropractor, correct?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay.
So we have a family-based referral chiropractic office in the Camp Creek Marketplace in Atlanta. So if you guys know where the airport is, we're not far from there. We have a beautiful office. We're probably we're 2 doors down from a PetSmart in the Camp Creek Marketplace. And it is a absolutely phenomenal environment. In 2017, me and my wife opened the doors to this new practice. And we decided to do it together because, what better way than be there to support each other. So when we opened up, it was just me and her. I was the front desk, the back office, the x-ray, all that stuff in between. And she was adjusting people. And since then, it's just been an amazing transition. We see, we were not the typical chiropractic office where we're just pain and suffering or personal injury and things like that. We see everybody from newborn babies to women who are actually pregnant, whole families. We have a family of 7 that comes in and have 5 kids, and every last one of them get adjusted. All the way to our senior care. We have a ton of seniors and vets, and we really, really just focus on making sure that our community is healthier and have resources so that they'll be able to avoid some of these health disparities that we have. And a lot of times, I know Black men, we wait until we have an actual problem.
Yep.
So our whole focus is, let's be more proactive as opposed to reactive. Let's not wait till we got to be on drugs and medication before we start getting our body together. So we really just focus on that. And I love our office. I absolutely love it. I love how we do it. We do it with the absolute mission for our people in mind, to be honest with you.
And is there a website that folks can check out the office?
Yeah, you can go to touchoflifecairo.com.
Touchoflifecairo, .com. Gotcha. Yeah, we'll definitely make sure that howangelsaremade.com and touchoflifecairo.com is in the show notes. So if you all are in the Atlanta area, you check them out, go by, see them, see what's going on. Let Bryson Thompson Sr. know that you heard about him on Black Fathers Now, and go check them out, man. Again, they're talking about proactive care versus being reactive. But I want to throw something. It's interesting. You mentioned in 2017 that you and your wife together opened this practice, right? And we talked about hindsight being 2020, and you talked about growing up in Little Africa. So you talked about growing up in an environment in which there was this community, in which the land was owned. You talked about this environment in which you all relied on each other, and you saw Black people cooperatively putting things together and building. And fast forward 25 years from that, you and your wife cooperatively together have a chiropractic practice in Atlanta, Georgia. Remember, hindsight's 2020.
Absolutely,
man. Seeds of
I live in Little Africa. I live in Little Africa, Atlanta too, right? I'm not talking about just regular Atlanta. I live in South Fulton. South Fulton has the seventh highest population in all of Georgia as far as a city. We just became the city of South Fulton. So it is 95% African American. It really is like a city of Little Africa. Wow. So that's what we currently are now. And I tell people I came down to where I'm at in Atlanta for a specific reason, because I wanted to be able to serve and be around my people as much as possible. I mean, we have people from all different races and everything in our office, and we love that. But I just want my kids to be in that same type of environment that I grew up in, where they didn't have to worry about, like, if you're failing at school, you can't say it's a teacher discriminating against you. They're Black. You know what I mean? You get pulled over by a cop, you can't say discriminating on you. Black, he Black too. He pulling you over, brother. You did something wrong, more than likely. So I just wanted our kids to be in that environment. So that is, that Little Africa has stayed there. I got a garden in my backyard right now, man. I do the same growing my food like we did back home.
Wow.
So,
Dude, seeds are planted, brother. Seeds are planted. And, earlier on, we talked about the concept of cultivating greatness, right? You're cultivating greatness at home, with the family, with the community, with the business, but then also with this book, How Angels Are Made. And so, brother, I'm going to encourage you to continue cultivating that greatness, man, because you're impacting the world in a magnificent way. And we need more brothers like yourself doing that. So keep on shining, man.
Appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you, man.
No doubt. And before we get going, man, how has your journey, this amazing story, this journey, these twists and turns, how have all of these things come full circle to impact you as a father, specifically a Black father?
So I always wanted to be an amazing father. I knew early on that I wanted to be a great father. My stepdad, he worked at a cotton mill, and he worked double shifts, 60, 78 hours a week, every single week. And I watched that, and I watched how he provided. And I always knew that I would give that same thing to my kids one day. So all these different experiences have allowed me to understand what it takes to really pour into my kids. So, everything I've seen other people do, what I've seen my mother do, what I've seen, other fathers. When I get to the bros, I have some bros who are my mentors who, they're the fathers, and they do what they need to do. But I also have been able to see them grow their kids as their kids are older now. So me having younger kids, everything I've done has allowed me to really be able to impact my fatherhood and take it up a notch that I even above sometimes what I think I even expected of myself. Because it's COVID right now. We got homeschooling, man. Mm-hmm. We're here at the house. We have virtual learning since March. When I was at home with 3 kids for 2 months, man, I would have drove myself insane had I not had the educational background and make straight A's. That I think as a result of daddy daycare.
That's it.
All these things to your point, and I don't, I would, now that I'm talking, when you said what how does it all come full circle? I think 2020 has allowed everything to become full circle. It's allowed everything, because had I not went in education, had I not grown up in Africa, a lot of these things wouldn't have happened, so that my kids would have had these different opportunities to grow and advance, especially academically, emotionally, as far as being able to raise emotionally responsible kids, and just being more patient, because that classroom, man, if you've been there with some kids who got behavior disorders, you look at it and say, my kid acting up, but I've seen worse, so
you got perspective.
You got perspective, man. I don't see people turn some tables over it daily. So perspective. So it all comes full circle, man. I've been able to use every bit of this journey to just make me who I am. I'm not special, man. I mean, like I said earlier, I'm special. That's from the perspective of thinking I'm somebody, but I'm not different than anybody else. I'm not special. I just had, some good people who planted some good seeds. I mean, it's nothing special other than that.
I had some good people who planted some good seeds. So therefore, you are going about the business of planting some good seeds yourself.
Absolutely.
That's what this thing is all about. And brothers, I hope y'all paying attention to that. And I hope you take the examples that Bryson Thompson Sr. brought to the table and plant some good seeds as well. Make sure to grab his book, How Angels Are Made. You can visit howangelsaremade.com, grab a copy of the book or 20 copies and share them with others, with young kids, get the conversation started, but also learn about the story that led to this particular book. If you're in the Atlanta area, make sure to visit touchoflifecairo.com, touchoflifecairo.com in Atlanta. If you're in South Fulton and you need to go check them out, connect with them. Again, it's all about being proactive instead of being reactive in regards to our health and life. So Bryson, bruh, I appreciate you for sharing your story, sharing your journey, and empowering us, but also helping me to learn and think about communication from a different angle. So, man, I salutes to you for that, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me on, man. You continue to do what you're doing. I've checked out a couple of the podcasts as well, leading up to here, and man, you're doing a wonderful job, man. So, from brother to brother, continue to do what you're doing. We both probably still believe the same thing. I believe that it's our job to lead our families.
Absolutely.
I believe that society doesn't tell us what should happen and how it should look and what's supposed to go on. At the end of the day, we were given a God-given responsibility.
Absolutely.
And we got to lead. And the more brothers lead, the better it'll be. We don't need all these extra stuff going on. We need us to step up and continue to do what we do. And we also need to start holding each other accountable. So for every brother listening to the podcast, if you got a brother who's not listening to the podcast, he needs to be listening.
Yes.
If you got another brother who is not doing what he's supposed to do, you need to be on his behind. We got to hold each other accountable, just like we would when we were playing sports and every other thing that we're doing. Let's hold each other accountable, and we're already the greatest group of dads. I don't give a dang what nobody tell me. We have the greatest subgroup of fathers in the world, and we need to make sure it's the greatest group of parents. When people say great parents, it should be black males. Not to knock any other, the women or the males or any other race, but black males got to do what we got to do to make this.
And what did you say earlier? If we don't tell them, then they don't know.
Yeah,
if we don't do it, they don't know. Like, so real talk, fellas, let's make this thing happen. So look, fellas in the Black Fathers Now family, y'all make sure to support Bryson Thompson Sr. Grab a copy of his book, How Angels Are Made. Visit howangelsaremade.com. Make sure to check out the chiropractic practice in Atlanta, Georgia, touchoflifecairo.com. And again, make sure to let them know that you heard about them on blackfathersnow.com. Make sure to subscribe to Black Fathers Now on your favorite podcast listening app. And when you're on your favorite app, leave comments, leave ratings, continue to share, as this helps us to grow in the rankings and grow in the searchability of Black Fathers Now. Our goal is to impact Black fathers across the world. We want us to go from good to great Good to great. We're already good. We want to go from good to great. We want excellence in Black fatherhood to become the new average. And make sure to follow Black Fathers Now on social media and reach out. Let me know you heard about this one. Let me reach out to Bryson. Let him know you heard about this episode and you learned a lot about life and about communication and his journey. And just support. And until next time, fellas, ladies listening to, and everybody else, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And I'll holler at you. Peace.